and welcome to the first ever Global Impact virtual conference hosted by ISTE community leaders. This experience is going to showcase how remarkable educators worldwide are making a big impact in global education. And if you've been joining us, we're about halfway through our live sessions for today, and we have had some incredible presenters talking about some incredible conversations and topics in global education. So thanks so much for hanging out with us today if you're joining us live. I am Kayla Holland, and I am part of the ISTE Community Leaders Global Impact Team, joining you today from Charlotte, North Carolina in the United States. And I am so excited to be your host for this session, Voice AI and Speaking for ESL Students. Our presenter for this session is Marharyta joining us from the Ukraine. She has lots of experience designing curriculum and lessons, making multimedia materials, and understanding how adults learn best. So without further ado, Marharyta, welcome. Hi. Thank you so much for being with us today, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I'm so excited and I'm so worried about this, but that will be okay. And my topic today is about voice AI and speaking for ESL students. And let's start. A little bit about me. I'm co-founder of Educational 3D Hub. I like teach students and I like learn about how to teach students. And my students told me that my favorite task, that's maybe, and my hobby, just surfing in the net and come back to school and suggest the activities for my students and implement all practice tasks into my curriculum. And today we discuss about how we teach and learn ESL students to speak and what kind of tools we decided to implement during our lessons and why important to consider your attention about content and how implement these tools and content during our lessons. And just try to answer for yourself this question: which of the four skills, reading, writing, speaking, or listening, tends to be the most challenging for students when learning a new language, and why? And most of all maybe answers that maybe listening, maybe speaking, maybe writing, or maybe reading. And during our session, we will try to find the answer on this question. And I want to present the program, that's national program from in Ukraine, that's Future Perfect, and that's main purpose of this program involve all Ukrainian people, students, teachers, learn English. And that's important because our government support and suggest to learn English because it's a language of communication for whole world. And how implement during a life learning style, during all time, how you can learn English. And according the survey that was organized by government for Ukraine was at what level the Ukrainians know English. And you can see the result of this survey. And the first, that's reading, that's the better way, listening, and after speaking and writing. So if you come back to the question, what's the hard we can learn? Speaking and writing. And why? Because we should produce some materials and should think about how we can produce the new language which we learn during some period of time, for example. And the main challenge that the ability to communicate effectively is the one the students will be evaluated on the most in the real world. That's Gillian Brown, University of Edinburgh. So communication are the most important part of our everyday life, and that's challenge for us to start to speak. And how to start to speak, we just discover. And where we should start. If you remember, many years ago, we start to discuss and discover the digital tools which must help us to prepare students for the future life, and how to build our lessons, implement these digital tools in our lessons. And now we change the words, we change digital to AI, and artificial intelligence start to involve our ideas how to build our lessons. And the main question, what will be the first, tools or content? Let's discuss. And before I start to use AI in my lessons, I used Flipgrid and Mode. A little bit about Flipgrid mentioned Monica Joshi from India before my session. And Flipgrid I used when we have Office, Microsoft Office for our school. And now I like that we have Copilot integrated in this program, in this app. And that's so nice because you just may write, for example, some words, what we want to discuss with your students, for example, like spring, and choose the ages for your students. And after the system suggests you some question, and you make choose. For example, I choose what hobbies do you enjoy in spring, like this. And this is, you may see supporting question to this, the main question. What activities do you like to do outdoors in spring? How has your hobby enriched your life in spring? What techniques do you use to enjoy your hobby in spring? And after this, you can suggest, the system suggests you create the some kind of resource, and you answer of this question according your voice. And after, you may create the copy, create the link and copy this link and share for your students. And for example, you may see I answered this question, and here one as teacher and the classmates may add the answer and suggest response for my for example, answer for my question and answer for my answer. And after, you can share the link and present for other, for example, community, or send to parents, and this will be the speaking skills. That is Flipgrid for Microsoft Office. And for example, I have Google Classroom, and for Google Classroom, we have used Mode. This fast, friendly voice message that you may add, download from Chromebook, from Google. And this application very nice when you want to use the for the different documents, for example. And you can sign up with Google, and after choose your role. For example, I'm educator, and you have 30 days of unlimited for free. And after you leave your free account for the simple using or way of using of mode, and after you can start to choose what do you want to add your voice. And for example, usually I choose docs, record in docs, and how it may present, for example. That is, we see some short instruction. For example, you have the text, highlight some texts, open a comment, tap the mode button and record a mode, and click done when finished, and just post. And you can see how it will be. This is my text, for example, and I underline this sentence and click on comment and just start my comments. And the most important that you may choose the language. For example, translate from English, this is original language, to Ukrainian, or for example, French or Spanish or German. And this will be so nice for students who sometimes maybe don't understand separately words or can't connect whole meaning of your message. And that is important for students. Why? And for example, if I want to translate, just choose translate to Ukrainian, and you can see this is my native language, that's Ukrainian. And also you may add comment like teacher or like students to this message. This is about Microsoft and Google. If you have official account for your school, that's very important. But just think, tools now suggest like conversational artificial intelligence refers to technologies such as chatbots or virtual agents that users can talk to. They use large volumes of data, machine learning, and natural language processing to help imitate human interactions, recognizing speech and text inputs, and translating their meanings across various languages. If we speak about AI, we should understand that conversational artificial intelligence more wider than just chatbots or virtual agents. And that's important for you if you are planning to build your own chatbots or just conversational artificial intelligence instrument model. And if you are going to implement these tools like voice AI, text AI, or conversational AI, you just used this phrase and type in into Google browser and find the different apps that may help you to understand what kind of these tools are going to implement into your lesson. But come back to the question, where to start, tools or content? And the main problem when we use tools, that just tools. We can't involve students using tools because so many proposals for teacher and so many tools now we can implement into our lesson. But the most important, that content, you should understand what kind of result you are going to pick up, for example, or expect from your students, and how are you going to reach this result? What is your goal during your lesson? How you can help your students to start to speak? So consider on the content. And I have prepared for you this Google Sheet. And you can see, just download about this a little bit time, and you make copy of this. And I suggest you some tools that you may use during your lesson. For example, that's just speech to text or text to speech. These two kinds of using AI in order to start practice speaking skills into your students. So you can may check this list of setup of these tools. And after I consider about that, suggest ChatGPT prompt generate descriptors for evaluating progress in speaking for students who is ECL. Why it's important? Because, for example, you start practice during your lesson. Every lesson may suggest your students start to speak, but the most important to get feedback from you as teacher, how your students, how our students move from A to B, for example, how they start and how they finished. And ChatGPT suggests, for example, the about vocabulary, grammar and syntax, and communication skills, listening and responding. And you can see what kind of these descriptors will be suitable for you, for your students. Maybe you may consider only for example, fluency, or you may choose word usage appropriately, selects and uses words in context. And you create for yourself some kind of these descriptors. And after I will come back to my presentation. And after you suggest your students the task, for example, during the lesson, you suggest describe the pictures and be creative. And how you may use this? You may suggest only your own voice, because you may separate the task for the different students. One may get one task, other may get other task, and use this application like text to speech, and you can start to, excuse me, and you can start to record your voice. You add this text speaking. You may choose, for example, the role. Choose the language and role. And for example, at this I'm Anna, and when I speak, that you may listen what will be.
Look at the picture and describe it. Be innovative. Look at the
So you may choose, for example, man voice or not children, or set up your stability for your voice and the different way present the information for your students. And after, for example, when your students describe this picture, you may choose the next application like speech text, and students dictate your answer and describe the story, describe the pictures that you suggest for them. And you can see, for example, this is example how describe this picture. And after, you can add information to ChatGPT, because you have the descriptors in ChatGPT, and suggest ChatGPT the prompt, analyze this text according to the descriptors, and add the text to ChatGPT that your students create like speaking. And after you get the answer that ChatGPT answer you, sure, let's analyze the provided text according to the descriptors. And you can see they analyze pronunciation, but that's a question a little bit because ChatGPT can't listen. The answers that only you can listen as teacher. But vocabulary, you can see that text includes descriptive words such vibrant, fantastical, word usage. The words are used appropriately, and grammar, sentence structures, the sentences are grammatically correct and well structured. Communication skills, clarity, the text effectively communicates the sense, allowing readers to visualize the whimsical and adventure. And you can check every answer for feedback for your students. That's so much important that your students get feedback. But this is like text. You can see this is text. And what we can do, the next maybe used tools for get feedback, or not feedback, that's for creating text from type recording. You may use the Hugging Face. That's very nice application. For example, you can just download MP3 file and just click submit, and the system convert your speech into the text, and you may analyze after this text. The main goal that you when you suggest your students practice speaking, they should receive your feedback, and this feedback you may organize using descriptors and analyze these descriptors according the text will be converted one to that speech to text. But the most interesting, for example, you may go and I will share the same activity with Gemini, how it organized. For example, the same task, analyze this text according to the descriptors, and you add text that students present you as MP3 file that you converted from a speech to text, and you add here one descriptors. For this, you may use only one, for example, vocabulary. And Gemini suggests you what kind of descriptors will be used and how well students answer to your question. But the most important is that we can listen.
Your analysis is right on point. Here's a breakdown based on the provided descriptors. Vocabulary range. You identified excellent examples of descriptive words.
And that's so important for students. If you share just, for example, this link for students and students get feedback, that a little bit challenge maybe for teachers, but if you're providing like consistently every day or maybe during 2 times per week, maybe 3 times per week for every student, such activities, that will be very nice because it's formed a habit, and students start to speak not afraid about, and don't worry, is it fluency or accuracy is right for them. And that I will present feedback for students. And that's so much interesting sentence, and was in about importance feedbacks. without feedback, students struggle to identify either strengths or weaknesses in their speaking skills, often due to their lack of subject knowledge and also pedagogical content knowledge required to conduct and expert analysis. So you should suggest answer to your students how well their progress in speaking skills during certain period of time. It's maybe months, maybe 2 months, you suggest. And I suggest for my students the speaking tracker, and that's important for them because we suggest the task during 2024 year, and that's for ECL students. The level may be different, and we choose for this year the word of the year consistency, and we have the timer that built here. For example, we have break, or for example, that's the task, and count this time, and we have the task for goals, listen podcast, record yourself, shadowing techniques, and for example, today that we start from December of 2023, and that example was listen podcast and example, and 24 we will start read aloud, join conversation groups, expand vocabulary, and we have the technique like, for example, shadowing and how to join conversation group, and this we suggest when. That's most important because, for example, get up early and start, for example, listen podcast, and that's maybe only 5 minutes, and after shadowing, or for example, start to record yourself. And we have add playlist for this, or academic location list, here one that we can teach together with students, for example, and what kind of words maybe they know or maybe not, and how to work with this. And after, for example, you may this is the open page, the published page. You may download and use it and add your own list of what kind of activity you suggest to your students, because it's important to practice every day for speaking. And I asked my colleague and Ukrainian community who now live, many Ukrainians live now in Europe and other countries, and their recommendation was that just consider attention to practice phonics, practice pictures, describe pictures. Why pictures? Because that's emotion, and the students so much like to describe pictures and think about what will be next, and used games. And we have some challenge that about cognitive mechanics that many my colleagues noticed. Then, for example, we make one step ahead to practice and learn and teach speaking skills, but during, for example, months or 2 months, many students and many adults come back to step ago. Come back because they tired. Why tired? Because when you start to speak, you or learn new language, you always active learner. You listen, you try to be involved in the process, and you tired. And you should notice this moment when your students start tired, and suggest the relaxing activities. Not consider learn language as you usually learn, for example, some requirements to your students when you can involving in the process during the lesson. Just suggest them free time and relaxing. And the next challenge for Ukrainian person who live in the different country now, that accent, because we learn language according book from famous publisher, and that's clear voice without any accent, and now we can start listen the different accents. The people from the different country communicate with us, and the most important in this question that teach students and other persons to be tolerant, because if you be tolerant, you can respect other person, and you can listen them because they encourage you. You are cool, that's very nice, try again. To be tolerant, so important in this case. And if you come back to cognitive mechanics, that's important. Keep learners actively thinking, and help students figure it out doing by themselves. For example, you organize a radio station in your classroom and suggest your students be active, and describe the picture, but students should recorded their voices, and these voices you may collect up in your Google Classroom or Microsoft Office, and after analyze using ChatGPT or Google Gemini, and suggest what kind of descriptors will be so important for you. And resource which I used during this presentation, and you may go and follow by link and learn more about this question, how voice AI may help now to develop speaking skills of our students. And I'm open for questions.
Oh, excellent. Because I have quite a few that have come in for you, Marharyta. That was so amazing. I'm going to pull your slides now. We can put it back up in a second. And I hope you don't mind. I shared your slide deck in the chat because it's also available on the website. So if you're watching us live, you can access Marharyta's slide deck, which has all of those beautiful resources linked for you on our website. But I do have some questions. People loved Moat. Some have not heard of that one before, others had. So could you talk about, do you use the free version of Moat or do you use the paid version?
I used free. That's enough for me. I am unfortunately not pay now, can't pay, and that's enough because, for example, I choose some text only, and that's for Google Docs, and that's good for our students because I like be more simple, not looking for the hard work, because I like to save my time and be effective.
Yes, absolutely. And I think Moat was one of the favorite resources you shared early on. I think others were wondering, what grade do you teach? So tell us a little bit about just your kind of normal day-to-day. What grade do you teach? Obviously, you're teaching ESL and language students. But just talk a little bit about you.
That's a little bit challenge to me because the last before war I was a principal at school, and that a little bit other requirements for me from co-founder of school. But when I work as teacher, that I prepared the lessons for my students and just spend time with students, and I work as a teacher of English, and that's maybe 18 hours per week.
18 hours per week. Okay. Excellent. Yeah. So that, I mean, that's just so interesting that you've said you were a principal before the war, and now you teach basically 18 hours a week. Is that in a school setting, or is that more like in the United States, we might call that like an after school or a tutoring system? What does that
That's
look like for
tutoring
you?
system. That's tutoring
Yeah.
system. Now it's tutoring system, and that will be now like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that's just I can't even imagine, Margarita. And Margaret said in this chat, I'm so sorry that the war has affected you in such a way. Um, I am just so excited that you came and shared with us today. I think all of your resources, I was trying to keep up with you and sharing them in the chat. There's so many that you have available. I think people were really interested in a lot of the AI tools that you use, and they were interested in your spreadsheet. I think that was a big hit as well. So if you have that link, we'll throw it in the chat. If anybody has any other questions for Margarita, please place them in the chat. I can ask her quickly. While you are placing those questions in the chat, I'm going to wrap up just a little bit here. So again, thanks so much to Margarita for your incredible presentation. And thanks to everyone who's participating in our chat today. We've seen a lot of the same names over and over joining us live, and we just appreciate your participation. We'd love to know what you've learned today from this session and any of the sessions you're learning. So even if you're watching live, if you're watching this recorded in 5 days, go ahead and scan this QR code or click the link in the chat and access a digital template to share your takeaways. And make sure if you're sharing them on social media to use our hashtags #ISTEGlobal and #GlobalImpact. As we wrap up this live session, I have a couple of ways that you, either joining live or watching this recording, can continue connecting with us. If you haven't yet registered for ISTE Live 24, we highly encourage you to do that today. If you are joining us in Denver for ISTE Live, be sure to check out our Global Collaboration Playground, where we're going to continue amazing conversations like this about global education, sustainable development goals, and all of our favorite topics at the Global Collaboration Playground on Wednesday. If you would rather collaborate with us virtually, you can join us on Connect, which is a virtual space to share, meet, and collaborate with like-minded educators in a digital forum. So if you want to continue our conversation on global ed, make sure you connect with us there. If you're not an ASCD ISTE member, don't worry, you can sign up for free and join in on the wonderful conversations. And I think a lot of these links are going to be put in the chat. If they're not, they're available on our future events page on the website. And finally, our last one, and this happens to be my favorite reminder, another initiative we're doing as part of the ISTE Community Leader Global team is called Featured Educator. And you may have seen some educators being featured on our social media platforms. And so what we're trying to do is select 2 educators per month to be featured on our social media pages, just basically to highlight the great work that they're doing in the classroom. So definitely nominate yourself or someone you know for that, and we will make sure to be able to feature them and their content on our social media pages. We would also like to shout out some of our pre-recorded sessions. There are almost 50 pre-recorded sessions in addition to the incredible live streaming sessions we have for you today that are available on the website. You can locate those by clicking the pre-recorded sessions. You do have to register, so make sure you're registering for this conference, the Global Impact Conference, and then clicking those links we've provided for you. Thanks again for joining this live session. We hope to see you at our next session happening in a little over 20 minutes. And it is with Georgina Dean, titled Beyond Hype, Demystifying AI in Education. And I'm going to throw some of my other members on the stage here. It is not just me. There is a whole team of ISTE community leaders making today happen for you. So from all of us, our whole global team, to you, thanks so much for joining us for our live calls today. And we hope to see you in just about 20 minutes for our next live session with Georgina Dean. See you then.
Thank you. Thank you for